SBI की टिप से आप बन जाओगे एंटी स्कैम चैंपियन। पूछते हैं आपके अकाउंट का हाल, पर असलियत में ये है स्कैमर्स की चाल। बी स्कैम से।
Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India NewsHour, India's voice to the world. I'm Amritpal Singh. Coming up in the next 1 hour, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi lauds the 2025 budget as people's budget. Says it will give momentum to making the country self-reliant. India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announces a major relief for the middle class. No income tax up to 12 lakh rupees under the new tax regime.
There will be no income tax payable up to income of 12 lakh rupees.
Minister Sitharaman presents her 8th consecutive budget, exempts 36 life-saving drugs from basic customs duty, raises FDI limit for insurance sector from 74% to 100%. In an exclusive interview to Doordarshan, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman explained the zero tax payable up to an income of 12 lakh rupees in the new tax regime announced during the union budget.
That the rates are far lesser than the rates which are prevailing as of today. So one with the simplification, rate reduction, and also a smooth flow of rate without any jumps, and higher incomes also coming into the lower slab. So the benefit of this income tax reduction that we've done are not just in saying up to a certain income you will pay no tax, but across the board for all incomes the rate is brought down.
Yes.
Up to 12 lakh, not only has the rate come down, but we are saying whatever is the tax incidence falling on the individual will be rebated out, so that they don't have to pay any tax.
The Finance Minister thanked the Prime Minister for making this budget friendly for the taxpayers of the country.
माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी को धन्यवाद देना चाहती हूँ। इसमें उनके गाइडेंस था कि टैक्स फोरगॉन के कैलकुलेशन से हट करके जनता के हाथ में वापस कितना पैसा, क्योंकि ये लोग कौन है, ये टैक्स पेयर्स हैं, उनके लिए राहत देने के लिए प्रधानमंत्री जी का एक सुझाव था कि आप कुछ ऐसे कैलकुलेशन करो कि टैक्स पेयर ऑनेस्ट टैक्स पेयर से पे कर रहे हैं, उनको क्या हम दे पाएंगे।
And Sitharaman presented the union budget for 2025-26 in the Parliament this morning. While presenting the budget, the Finance Minister said that India's economy is the fastest growing among all major economies in the world. She stated that the proposed budget measures focus on 10 broad areas, and this budget aims to take everyone along on an inclusive path of growth. Sitharaman added that this budget is dedicated to accelerating growth driven by our aspirations for Viksit Bharat. Let's take a look at the major highlights of the union budget.
Her white and red sari said it all. She meant business. This was her 8th budget. The Indian economy in flight was now cruising at around 7% as it surveyed the markets around it. She saw the opportunity to put money where it mattered, in sectors that needed a boost, where India could develop and sustain an edge, and also in the infrastructure that held the economy together. Her fuel, reforms. The guiding spirit, inclusivity. And the destination, Viksit Bharat. So this is what she did. More money in the hands of the middle class. No tax with total income up to 12 lakh rupees. More credit guarantee for small businesses, the backbone of exports. Additional credit of rupees 1.5 lakh crore in the next 5 years for MSMEs. New fund of funds with expanded scope and fresh contribution of another 10,000 crore rupees to be set up for startups. Support for leather footwear and products to facilitate 22 lakh jobs. Create turnover of 4 lakh crore rupees and exports of rupees 1.1 lakh crore. India Post to be transformed into a large public logistics organization to benefit new entrepreneurs, women, self-help groups, MSMEs and large business organizations. Gig workers of online platforms to get healthcare under PM Jan Arogya Yojana to help 1 crore workers. Rupees 1.5 lakh crore proposed for 50-year interest-free loans to states for capex. Asset monetization plan for 2025-30 to plough back capital of rupees 10 lakh crores in new projects. Regulatory and fiscal measures will be fine-tuned to support the plan. Extension of Jal Jeevan Mission until 2028 with enhanced total outlay. Urban Challenge Fund of rupees 1 lakh crore to implement cities for growth hubs, creative redevelopment of cities and water and sanitation challenges. Maritime Development Fund with corpus of 25,000 crore rupees to be set up. Special window for affordable and mid-income housing. Rupees 15,000 crore for another 1 lakh units. Private sector research, development and innovation initiative gets rupees 20,000 crores. FDI limit for insurance sector raised from 75 to 100%. A light touch regulatory framework to be put in place for ease of doing business. Total estimated expenditure rupees 50.65 lakh crores. Total estimated receipts other than borrowing rupees 34.96 lakh crores. Net tax receipts estimated at 28.37 lakh crore rupees. Fiscal deficit estimated at 4.4% of GDP.
And presenting India's union budget, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on Saturday pegged the fiscal deficit target at 4.4% of the GDP for the financial year 25-26. For 24-25, the fiscal deficit target has been revised from 4.9% of the GDP to 4.8%. The budget also promises to continue government's efforts to accelerate growth, secure inclusive development, invigorate private sector investments, uplift household sentiments and enhance spending power of India's rising middle class. Here's a report.
In a bid to continue the Indian economy's journey on course of fiscal consolidation, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced a 50.65 lakh crore budget, the biggest in the history of India, with an aim to maintain economic growth and keep the fiscal deficit on the declining path.
Our economy is the fastest growing among all major economies. Our development track record for the past 10 years and structural reforms have drawn global attention. Confidence in India's capability and potential has only grown in this period. We see the next 5 years as a unique opportunity to realize Sabka Vikas, stimulating balanced growth of all regions.
As per the budget estimates 2025-26, the total receipts other than borrowings is pegged at rupees 34.96 lakh crore and the total expenditure or the total size of the budget has been kept at rupees 50.65 lakh crore. The net tax receipts are estimated at rupees 28.37 lakh crore. The fiscal deficit target for 2025-26 is pegged to be at 4.4% of the GDP as compared to the previous year's figure of 4.8%. To finance the fiscal deficit, the net market borrowings from dated securities are estimated at rupees 11.54 lakh crore. The balance financing is expected to come from small savings and other sources. The gross market borrowings are estimated at rupees 14.82 lakh crore. In order to maintain the growth momentum of the Indian economy, the capital expenditure or capex has been kept at around rupees 15.5 lakh crores, an upward revision from the previous year's figure of rupees 10.18 lakh crore. In the budget 2025-26, the sectors that have received the largest budgetary allocations are Defence 4.91 lakh crore, Rural Development rupees 2.66 lakh crore, Home Affairs 2.33 lakh crores, Agriculture rupees 1.71 lakh crore, Education rupees 1.28 lakh crore, Health rupees 98,000 crore, and Urban Development 96,000 crore.
In this budget, the proposed development measures span 10 broad areas focusing on Garib, Youth, Annadata and Nari, spurring agricultural growth and productivity, building rural prosperity and resilience, taking everyone together on an inclusive growth path, boosting manufacturing and furthering Make in India, supporting MSMEs, enabling employment-led development, investing in people, economy and innovation.
The budget 2025-26 has been crafted with a special focus on agriculture, micro, small and medium enterprises or MSMEs, an investment-friendly environment and a major thrust on export-oriented economy, which will be fueled by reforms guided by the spirit of inclusivity with a clear target of mission Viksit Bharat or Developed India. Amit Mukherjee for DD India.
So the finance minister presented her record 8th consecutive union budget today, focusing on 4 engines: agriculture, MSME, investments and exports to drive the goal of Viksit Bharat or Developed India. Sitharaman announced the allocation of 20,000 crore rupees to promote investing in innovation. A report on the new initiatives in this year's union budget.
Just as living beings live expecting rains, citizens live expecting good governance. These words of Tirukkural were spoken by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman as she presented the Union Budget 2025-26 in Parliament. She highlighted the middle class's strength for India's growth. Among the many new transformative reforms to augment India's growth potential, Nirmala Sitharaman announced, for the first time, no income tax will be payable up to an income of 12 lakh rupees. 2 crore rupee loans for 5 lakh women, scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, first-time entrepreneurs for 5 years have been announced. The scheme will incorporate lessons from the successful Stand Up India scheme. 1 crore gig workers of online platforms will be recognized through registration on the e-Shram portal. 1 lakh crores have been allocated in the Urban Challenge Fund to implement cities as growth hubs, creative redevelopment of cities, and water and sanitation. A maritime development fund has also been set up, wherein 25,000 crores will be given for distributed support and promoting competition. 20,000 crores have been allocated for research and development of small modular reactors, wherein at least 5 indigenously developed small modular reactors will be operationalized by 2033. Medical tourism and Heal in India will be promoted in PPP mode. 20,000 crores for private sector driven research and development and innovation have been proposed. A deep tech fund of funds has been given for next generation startups. The second gene bank with 10 lakh germplasm lines for future food and nutritional security conservation support will be given to both public and private sectors for maintaining their genetic resources. 500 crores have been allocated for 1 Center of Excellence in Artificial Intelligence for Education. 10,000 PM Research Fellowships will be given for the next 5 years for technological research in IITs and Indian Institute of Science. 50,000 Atal Tinkering Labs will be set up in government schools in the next 5 years. Digital form Indian language books for school and higher education will be provided under Bharatiya Bhasha Pustak scheme. In the Gyan Bharatam mission, a national digital repository of Indian knowledge systems will be provided for over 1 crore manuscripts. In agriculture, under Prime Minister Dhan Dhanya Krishi Yojana, 100 districts will be covered and over 1.7 crore farmers would be benefited. Under the 5-year Mission for Cotton Productivity, improvements in sustainable cotton farming have been announced. A Makhana board in Bihar would be set up. Among the financial sector reforms, FDI limit in insurance sector has been raised from 74 to 100%. An investment friendliness index of states will be launched in 2025 to further the spirit of competitive cooperative federalism. And finally, under the digital public infrastructure, a Bharat Trade Net (BTN) will be set up for international trade transactions. Tanvi Taneja for DD India.
And Nirmala Sitharaman underlined that this budget aims to initiate transformative reforms across 6 domains to augment the growth potential and global competitiveness. The Finance Minister said that in the journey of development, reforms is the fuel.
Urban development, mining.
The budget proposals by Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will usher in a string of reforms in various sectors. This development will have a cascading domino effect on the overall economy, as the reforms will spur the growth in specific areas and act as a catalyst for the remaining sectors.
This budget aims to initiate transformative reforms across 6 domains. During the first 5 years, these will augment our growth potential and global competitiveness.
The most people-friendly part of the speech was, in fact, the announcement of a new income tax bill which will be brought in next week, reaffirming government's commitment of trust first, scrutinize later. The new income slabs are also sure to bring in loud cheer from all sections of the society. Government will forego at least 1 lakh crore in direct taxes as a result of new liberal direct tax proposals.
The new structure will substantially reduce the taxes of the middle class and leave more money in their hands, boosting household consumption, savings and investment.
Government has announced a light touch regulatory framework for enhanced productivity and employment.
A light touch regulatory framework based on principles and trust will unleash productivity and employment. Through this framework, we will update regulations that were made under old laws.
This feature will entail a new high-level committee on regulatory reforms which will submit recommendations within a year. Launch of an investment friendliness index for states, FSDC mechanism and Jan Vishwas Bill 2.0 to further decriminalize 100 more provisions in various laws. Financial sector reforms have also been identified. An important development will be allowing 100% FDI in the insurance sector. Further, company mergers will be streamlined and rationalized. A forum for development of pension products is also in offing. Power remains an important enabler for industry and homes alike. It plays an important part in any economy's surge northwards. Many important reforms have been promised in the power sector, with the Finance Minister identifying incentives in distribution sector and ushering in partnership with private sector in the critical area of nuclear energy.
For an active partnership with the private sector towards this goal, amendments to the Atomic Energy Act and the Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act will be taken up.
A state mining index is also among the major reform initiatives taken for the mining sector, which has the benefit of being labor intensive as well as having a domino effect on related areas. Last but not the least, government will also incentivize reforms related to the urban sector. Cumulatively, these steps on reforms in various sectors will go a long way in enhancing ease of doing business, boosting purchasing power of the common man, and providing further fillip for the economic growth of the nation. Ravi Dhiman for DD India.
And India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi hailed the Union Budget 2025. He called this year's budget a people's budget and said that it fulfills the dreams of the common man.
आज भारत की विकास यात्रा का एक महत्वपूर्ण पड़ाव है। ये 140 करोड़ भारतीयों की आकांक्षाओं का बजट है। ये हर भारतीय के सपनों को पूरा करने वाला बजट है। हमने कई सेक्टर्स युवाओं के लिए खोल दिए हैं। सामान्य नागरिक विकसित भारत के मिशन को ड्राइव करने वाला है। ये बजट एक फोर्स मल्टीप्लायर है। ये बजट सेविंग्स को बढ़ाएगा, इन्वेस्टमेंट को बढ़ाएगा, कंजम्पशन को बढ़ाएगा और ग्रोथ को भी तेजी से बढ़ाएगा।
And Prime Minister Modi thanked Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and said that this year's budget lays a foundation for the citizens of the country to become partners in development.
मैं वित्त मंत्री निर्मला सीतारमण जी और उनकी पूरी टीम को इस जनता जनार्दन का बजट, पीपल्स का बजट, इसके लिए बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं। साथियों, आमतौर पर बजट का फोकस इस बात पर रहता है कि सरकार का खजाना कैसे भरेगा, लेकिन ये बजट उससे बिल्कुल उल्टा है। लेकिन ये बजट देश के नागरिकों की जेब कैसे भरेगी, देश के नागरिकों की बचत कैसे बढ़ेगी और देश के नागरिक विकास के भागीदार कैसे बनेंगे, ये बजट इसकी एक बहुत मजबूत नींव रखता है।
And Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnav, in an exclusive interaction with DD India, stressed that the focus on infrastructure development, taxation and fiscal deficit target of 4.4% will ensure growth. He gave the budget a 10 on 10 for its bold approach with its focus on growth and innovation.
10 on 10, absolutely great budget, amazing budget. Managing fiscal deficit, managing the capex investment, getting the facilities for our middle class families, making sure that the poor families, they get their due, making sure that the farmers are able to grow, making sure that employment opportunities come in, making sure that the innovation ecosystem is supported. Amazing. Making sure that the MSMEs are supported. It's a phenomenal budget. It's a dream budget.
And to talk more about the budget, I'm joined by Dr. Krishnamurthy Subramanian. He's Executive Director of the International Monetary Fund and a former Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India. Thank you, Dr. Subramanian, for joining in. Your first thoughts on the budget. The government is saying they're putting more money in the middle class pocket, trying to boost domestic production, consumption, so to reviving it, and that will kickstart growth. What does the budget lack?
Let's focus on what the budget does.
Okay.
I think the emphasis on consumption by reducing the income tax rate, especially for salaried individuals, I think is a very important step. I have actually tweeted and I have laid out the numbers for the impact on consumption. The Honorable Finance Minister had mentioned that the reduction in the income tax rate will mean 1 lakh crore of money that is foregone by the government. That is a direct transfer to the middle class and will spur consumption by about 4.7, 4.8% additionally above and beyond the rise in consumption that would have happened otherwise, and will also have an impact on GDP growth, because you have to remember that about 60% of our GDP is accounted for by consumption. So this will have an impact on GDP growth as well.
All right.
If you look at some of the other important measures that have been taken, I think especially on innovation and the startup ecosystem, I think those are also quite noteworthy to take.
We'll come to them one by one. So, when the government, with the tax relief that it's providing, there is a logic to it that it will spur our domestic consumption and growth, kickstart growth. But then the government does lose 1 lakh crore in revenues. How does it, plan to bridge that? Because they're saying fiscal deficit, she's projected at bringing it down. So what? Will they borrow more? How does she plan to go about it?
See, if the government were to borrow more, that would have actually meant a higher fiscal deficit. So clearly, when you look at the overall, budget mathematics, and I've been part of this administration, and therefore I can tell you, from the 2020 budget itself, there has been an emphasis on very clean budget numbers, laying out transparently, and in fact under promising and over delivering, which has been the case. So this time as well, I think with overall GST and the corporate income tax actually collections being very healthy, the 1 lakh crore that will be foregone on the personal income tax will not have a significant impact. Those of you who actually track my media interactions will remember that last year after the budget, exactly last year, I'd said that the fiscal deficit will actually be lower than 4.9%, and that is exactly how it transpired. It is consistent with the under-promising, over-delivering. So the 4.4% that is budgeted this time actually will also be achieved. Part of it is also coming from the fact that the increase in the capital expenditure is actually not as large. It's not a substantial increase, and that also I think helps to keep the budget math quite consistent.
So if the capex is not increased that much, how does the government plan to say boost infrastructure development?
I think that's a good question. We have to keep in mind here that last year's budget outlay for capex was 11.1 lakh crore, and of that only 10.18 lakh crore could actually be spent. So about a 1 lakh crore short, compared to the budgeted amount, which I think seems to suggest that there may be some constraints in the infrastructure ministries to actually spend the actual budgeted amount. In some sense, I think
Dr. Subramanian, they are attributing it to saying that there were elections, and then of course there are structural issues like state spending, etc., which the federal government doesn't have much leverage with. So the states have to be on the board. So, but
I don't think. Yeah. I don't think it is actually fully explained by the election, because the election could account for reduction in capex only in the first quarter. It can't explain actually why the whatever was basically not done in the first quarter, there couldn't be catch up in the subsequent quarters. And I think even with states, maybe there are some constraints states are facing in actually spending the amount. So rather than actually once again budgeting a large amount but not achieving that budgeted amount, I think the focus is on being able to do the amount that has been budgeted. Overall, I think the budgeted amount actually is not small as a percentage of the overall expenditures. It's still substantial, and I would particularly note that about 2.5 lakh crore has been allocated for capital expenditures in the Indian Railways. I think that is something that is really critical, in enabling infrastructure and thereby providing the growth impetus.
Okay. Another focus seems to be, Dr. Subramanian, employment generation. The kind of boost that's being given to the labor intensive industries like, say, leather. So the government's focus clearly seems to be this year to incentivize more employment generation.
Yes, here I must actually, explain to our viewers that the data clearly shows that there has been good performance on the employment dimension. If you look at 2017-18, the labor force participation ratio was about 48%, and that has increased to over 60% now in 2023-24. So a 12 percentage point actually absolute increase in the last 6 years. At the same time, unemployment rate has fallen from around 6% in 2017-18 to about 3.2% in 2023-24. So this is an area actually where the government has done good work. I think the steps that have been taken in this budget will provide further fillip to employment creation, which is something that is really critical. If you recall, yesterday's economic survey actually highlighted that India needs to create about 80 lakh jobs annually for the young population, and therefore this impetus is something that is absolutely paramount.
Okay. The push for regulatory reforms. She announced a committee to look into regulatory reforms. Would you say a step welcome, a bit late though, but a welcome step there?
Yes, we have to see, how the, the committee that has been announced actually goes about its work. I would particularly focus on the announcement by the Honorable Finance Minister about the direct tax code, and she mentioned that the bill will be tabled in Parliament next week. I would particularly, watch, what she mentioned, that the number of sections in the new tax code and the number of pages have been reduced by half. You would remember that, I was part of the committee that actually drafted the tax code, and submitted its report to the Honorable Finance Minister in 2019, where we had actually reduced the number of pages and the number of sections by a similar amount. So, and we also reduced the complexity of the overall of the Income Tax Act. So I think that's an aspect that really needs to be, we'll have to wait and watch what is achieved, because when we look at overall, the regulatory sphere and the ease of doing business, tax is a really critical element of that, and reducing complexity there is something that will really provide a fillip to doing business, especially for the smaller firms.
Absolutely. Well, let's see how this year plays out. Dr. Krishnamurthy Subramanian, thank you very much for joining us and lending us your insights. Thank you.
Namaskar, my pleasure.
And the union, okay, before we go any further, let's slip into a very short commercial break. Don't go away, we'll be back soon.
पर लोन लेने के लिए खुद का हैवी मार्जिन लगाना पड़ता है। 80% तक का बिजनेस लोन मिलेगा, हाँ? वो भी कोलैटरल फ्री। अच्छा, 5 करोड़ तक बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा संभाल लेगा। बड़ौदा महिला स्वावलंबन लोन, तो शुरू कीजिए अपना ड्रीम बिजनेस।
पढ़ाई में लड़कियों के नंबर अक्सर ज्यादा ही आते हैं,
इसलिए एसबीआई देता है हर नारी को एजुकेशन लोन्स 0.5% कम इंटरेस्ट रेट्स पे,
ताकि मास्टर्स के लिए विदेश जाने वाली लड़कियों का नंबर भी ज्यादा रहे।
एसबीआई, बैटिंग फॉर नारी शक्ति।
पर लोन लेने के लिए खुद का हैवी मार्जिन लगाना पड़ता है। 80% तक का बिजनेस लोन मिलेगा, हाँ? वो भी कोलैटरल फ्री। अच्छा, 5 करोड़ तक बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा संभाल लेगा। लेकिन बिजनेस शुरू हो गया तो इन दोनों कौन संभालेगा?
मम्मी, तुम बिजनेस संभालो, रोहन को मैं संभाल लूंगी।
बड़ौदा महिला स्वावलंबन लोन, तो शुरू कीजिए अपना ड्रीम बिजनेस।
ये है कॉल सेंटर वाले स्कैमर, रिवॉर्ड्स का लॉलीपॉप लेकर आए हैं और हमारे नागरिक को लगता है कि इनकी किस्मत खुल गई है। खुशी से बैंक डिटेल्स डालना शुरू, एक एसएमएस, एक लिंक और ट्रैप तैयार। ओ मैडम, रुक जाइए, अपने बैंक डिटेल्स डालने से पहले साइट तो वेरीफाई कर लीजिए। एसबीआई की स्कैम सेफ टिप से आप बनोगे स्कैम प्रूफ। ऐसे कॉल से रिवॉर्ड नहीं मिलने वाला, क्योंकि दाल में है कुछ काला। बी स्कैम सेफ।
पर लोन लेने के लिए खुद का हैवी मार्जिन लगाना पड़ता है। 80% तक का बिजनेस लोन मिलेगा, हाँ? वो भी कोलैटरल फ्री। अच्छा, 5 करोड़ तक बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा संभाल लेगा। बड़ौदा महिला स्वावलंबन लोन, तो शुरू कीजिए अपना ड्रीम बिजनेस।
पहले अधिकतर लड़कियां छोटा मोटा बिजनेस करती थी,
लेकिन अब एसबीआई देता है हर नारी को बिजनेस बढ़ाने के लिए कम टाइम में डिजिटल एमएसएमई बिजनेस लोन।
इसलिए अब लड़कियां बड़ा बड़ा बिजनेस करती हैं।
मिल गया ऑर्डर। एसबीआई, बैटिंग फॉर नारी शक्ति।
पर लोन लेने के लिए खुद का हैवी मार्जिन लगाना पड़ता है। 80% तक का बिजनेस लोन मिलेगा, हाँ? वो भी कोलैटरल फ्री। अच्छा, 5 करोड़ तक बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा संभाल लेगा। बड़ौदा महिला स्वावलंबन लोन, तो शुरू कीजिए अपना ड्रीम बिजनेस।
The Union Budget 2025 has received widespread appreciation from industry leaders across various sectors, highlighting its emphasis on economic growth, infrastructure development, sustainability, and the MSME empowerment. Experts have praised its focus on strengthening India's industrial foundation, fostering innovation, and enhancing global competitiveness. Listen in.
I would like to commend the Honorable Finance Minister for her leadership and the comprehensive budget she has presented today, which I think has been a pretty balanced budget. And of course, the most celebrated aspect of the budget has been the giant relief for the middle class in terms of the massive change in the income tax rates. Additionally, the changes in the TDS and the TCS norms would go a long way towards its endeavors for ease of doing business and ease of compliances. This budget is a commendable step as an enabler towards notable push towards clean tech and EV growth, as highlighted by the Honorable FM.
I would like to compliment the Finance Ministry and the entire team. They have given a fabulous budget. They have given money in the hands of middle class, which was the need of the hour. I think this will help in boosting the overall GDP growth rate of the country. And overall, an excellent budget, a very growth-oriented budget, very focused budget. So I would give 9.5 out of 10 for this budget.
The three key focus sectors: manufacturing, infrastructure, and upskilling. In manufacturing, the National Manufacturing Mission will definitely boost Make in India. The infrastructure, for me, the new age cities through infrastructure investments and PPP projects driven will definitely transform the urban projects. Now on the upskilling, the AI for Center of Excellence will help our education system and also the workforce of the future to adopt the latest technology. Now put together, I must say the technology adoption across all the sectors in India will definitely help India to be the leader for the sustainable development and digital transformation.
And praising the rise in the capex allocation, FICCI President Harshvardhan Agarwal said that it will have a multiplier effect on the economy.
The capex has been put at 11.2 lakh crore, which is a 10% increase on what the government is expecting to spend this year. And since capex has the multiplier effect, so we are quite happy that the government is continuing with that journey of focusing on the capex.
And FICCI's Vice President Vijay Shankar hailed the increase in the capex allocation in the budget.
Ease of doing business, focus on the rural, focus on the lower end of the urban population. I think all of these are very positive from the budget without compromising on fiscal consolidation. I think the focus on continued path of bringing down the fiscal deficit from 4.8 to 4.8%, 4.4%, big positive, not compromised on capital expenditure.
And RPG Group Vice Chairman Anant Goenka praised the increased focus on MSMEs in the budget. Listen.
The budget was very positive. I think big bang announcement was abolishment of income tax for up to 12 lakh income. This will give money to the hands of the middle class, increase consumption, and have other implications on increasing private investment. Second is fair amount of focus on job creation by focusing on MSMEs, by focusing on high employment sectors such as toys, leather goods, footwear.
And in conversation with DD India correspondent Shama Mishra, the CEO and MD of the National Stock Exchange, Ashish Chauhan, hailed the government's fiscal deficit target.
How would you lay out the fine details?
For me, I think there are three components of the budget which I liked. One of them is the more money in the hands of the middle class by reducing tax. The second is ensuring that there is a momentum on infrastructure creation which continues. And third is the fiscal deficit in check to 4.4%. These three are, in a way, competing priorities. If you, in any budget for any finance minister, if they want to reduce the fiscal deficit, then they need to increase taxes here. And of course, if they want to spend more money on infrastructure, then again, the fiscal deficit goes up. So these three have been combined very beautifully.
And the Union Budget 2025 has also received appreciation from India's northeastern states. President of the Arunachal Chamber of Commerce and Industries, Tara Nakchung has expressed his appreciation for the recent budget, particularly the increase in tax exemption limit to 12 lakh rupees. He believes that the move will provide significant relief to taxpayers and boost economic activity in the state.
आज का जो बजट जो पेश किया है ये फॉर फ्रेंडली है। जो सीतारामन मैडम ने जो आज 8th जो बजट जो पेश किया लोकसभा में बहुत अच्छा किया है। तो स्पेशली जो स्लैब जो बनाया गया है जो बहुत अच्छा हुआ। ये वुमेन जो एंटरप्रेन्योर्स के लिए जो बनाया है वो जो बजट लेकर आया है तो वो बहुत अच्छा किया है। स्पेशली उसके बाद में MSME सेक्टर में जो है तो उनका ध्यान दिया है इस पर का बजट में बहुत अच्छा हुआ।
And the co-founder of the Ramaya Evolute, Dr. Samarth Nagabhushnam, appreciated the 10,000 crore funds for the startups scheme, which shows the government's commitment to fostering innovation and entrepreneurship.
Budget 2025 has announced 10,000 crores fund of funds for startup. This combined with the 91,000 crore commitment from all the AFs will really boost the startup ecosystem. Especially we at Ramaya Evolute are involved in funding deep tech, core tech and hard tech kind of startups, and there seems to be an extreme high focus for deep tech, and there is a potential that deep tech fund of funds will also be created. Super excited, and I think all the entrepreneurs in India, all the startup ecosystem should be highly excited for this particular gift that the government is giving, and the overall direction that the government is thinking. Kudos to our finance minister and kudos to the government. It's a great news.
And to talk more about the budget, I'm now joined by Professor N.R. Bhanumurthy. He's a senior economist. He's joining us now from Chennai. Professor Bhanumurthy, first of all, your initial reactions to the budget.
Well, first of all, let me congratulate the finance minister and our team for presenting a very growth-oriented and also the budget which has some kind of a long-term focus. As the Prime Minister already very clearly mentioned, this budget is meant for job creation, MSME development, and also for the Vikasit Bharat. So in that sense, the Finance Minister actually balanced many of the challenges that Indian economy is facing right now. And I also would like to compliment the team that produced the economic survey, where the many ideas from that economic survey has been implemented in the current budget, especially where when the economic survey talks about the deregulation, there is a special focus of deregulation in the budget, and also the survey's emphasis on triggering the domestic levers for growth is also being addressed. To that extent, the finance minister actually balanced both growth and at the same time the concerns of the jobs and also the concerns of the rating agencies that are looking at very carefully about our fiscal numbers.
Okay. All right, let's go sector by sector. Let's first begin with the MSMEs. How does this budget, how will this budget boost the MSME sector?
Well, I think there are 3 or 4 direct measures that has been brought in the budget. One of them is increasing credit to the MSME sector, and also
an additional 1.5 lakh crore credit guarantee for the MSMEs.
Yeah. And then they also introduced credit card scheme for micro enterprises. And there are also incentive for MSME exporters. So generally we think MSMEs are generally manufacturing, but I think the budget identifies MSME services also, exporters also. And I think all these measures will actually have some impact on the expansion of the MSME sector. Again, yesterday, the economic survey, there is a separate chapter on MSME. And I think some of those recommendations have been implemented in the budget. Of course, there are many more going forward, I'm sure the government will address those concerns also. Overall, I think the point is we need to see that the share of MSME sector, both in terms of growth as well as job creation, should go up, and at the same time they will be part of a larger formal sector. So to that extent, I think the proposals have been really welcoming, and I'm sure they'll be responding more positively in terms of expanding the whole MSME sector. In fact, even the financial sector, particularly the banking sector, will also look at little more positively in terms of providing loans to the MSME sector after the policies that has been laid out in the budget.
All right. Agriculture, let's talk about agriculture. How does the budget plan to boost agriculture?
Well, agriculture, in fact, you have seen the allocations to the agriculture sector has not really gone down. I mean, there is some discussion about it, but if you look at the fine print, there is an increase in the allocation for the agriculture sector. But I think we need to look at, again, agriculture not in a separate entity. We need to look at agriculture and allied activities. So the lot of growth seems to be happening on the allied agriculture activity. And again, the economic survey talks about the diversification of the agriculture sector. So some of the policies that have been made today, especially increasing the credit under the Kisan credit card, that will also lead to larger expansion of the agriculture sector. The underlying policy objective of increasing the share of agriculture sector by at least 1 percentage point is something that is doable with some of the policies that is being brought in today.
Okay. Let's look at defense allocation. There is a slight increase over the next year, but over the last year, sorry. But it really, falls short of the kind of firepower the Indian defense sector needs, especially if you want to, make in India and boost the defense production and also the defense needs of the forces.
Well, we need to see a substantial increase in the defense allocation. That I think there is
about 9.5%.
Yeah, there is no second opinion on that. But at the same time, our effort is also to see whether we can utilize the whole domestic capacity to enhance the defense capability. Between the imports and domestic production, I'm sure the domestic production is going to be little more cost effective compared to the imports. So maybe there is some calculation going around that depend more on the domestic production. But having said that, these numbers can change depending on the requirement, and I'm sure going forward there will be at least couple of supplementary demand for grants. So the defense sector, if it is required, I'm sure the government can accommodate those additional allocations in the supplementary demand, supplementary budgets.
Professor Bhanumurthy, why haven't they been, even in the defense, for example, or the capex, utilize all allocation? Last year, capex allocation could not be utilized. Now, this fiscal year, there is only a marginal increase in that, saying that the focus would be now on, using the whole allocation. Is there a structural problem with that?
Well, I was the one who argued for a larger capex for a long time. And in fact, the capex multiplier that is being talked about is based on our study. So I have been arguing that I think when the economy was down, going for a higher capex was a better option. And I think we have done well in the last 3 years. But what happened in the current, that is FY25, we have clearly seen the kind of constraints that the governments face in terms of pushing some of the big ticket projects under the public investment. And more so that happened in the current year because of the elections that we had. And also some of the elections happened in the bigger states like Maharashtra. So both at the central level as well as the state level, there were constraints in terms of pushing the capital expenditures, than what is budgeted. Having said that, even despite all this limitation, the revised estimate suggests somewhere close to 10.2 lakh crore has been invested in the current year, that is the FY25. So I don't really see that as a major constraints going forward. Now that we have budgeted 11.2 lakh crore with a little more allocation to the states from 1.3 to 1.5 lakh crore. So we see more opportunity, at least in my view, we see more opportunity at the state level. And I hope FY26 we'll see a much better capex, both at the union level as well as the state government's level.
Okay. So let's talk about energy transition. Is the budget pushing for energy transition, given that the National Manufacturing Mission and the Nuclear Energy Mission have been, there is a focus or spotlight on that?
Well, again, I don't think that is going to be limited to the budget. It needs a slightly different strategy. And the last budget, we have seen there are more incentives have been given for energy transition. And this time, I think there's a little more focus, at least at the headlines, we have seen that the focus more on nuclear energy and all those aspects. But I guess this is a work in progress and need not be limited to the budget. We should be looking at some more actions going forward on that area.
All right. So let's see how this all plays out in this fiscal year. Professor N.R. Bhanumurthy, thank you very much for joining us and sharing your insights with us.
Thank you.
And that's it in this edition of DD India NewsHour. But do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India's mobile app. The app is available both on Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code you see on your screens right now to download. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. The budget discussions continue with my colleagues Gautam and Ramesh in a bit. Thank you.
पर लोन लेने के लिए खुद का हैवी मार्जिन लगाना पड़ता है। 80% तक का बिजनेस लोन मिलेगा।